What's good, everybody? Now, long gone are the days of Fedor Emelianenko, Rampage Jackson, Daniel Cormier, Stipe Miocic, John Jones. We are now in an era where these men are walking into the cage, these heavyweights, 265 pounds of pure jiggliness, right? The difference between a professional MMA heavyweight athlete, apparently supposed to be the best of the best in the sport, and the average guy at your bar is minimal. We have cut that distance significantly. We have guys in the rankings, guys that are still fighting in the UFC heavyweight division that have no business being here. So today, we're going to talk about why this heavyweight division, this current heavyweight division we have, is going to get exposed by 2027 without a doubt, right? So let's go over a little bit. Why is this heavyweight division receiving so much critique? What's going on? These fights, these fighters bring shame to the UFC. It feels like every other card, we see a heavyweight scrap that just brings shame. Brings shame and sadness and despair and just memories of what used to be, you know. Ngannou versus Derek Lewis, two of the best power punchers. Boring decision. Derek Lewis by decision. What? Right? Tai Tuivasa, Talson Teixeira. They look like two whales mating in the octagon. Right? They look like they were having intercourse in there. Jailton Almeida, Rizvan Kuniev, boring decision. Right? Any of Shamil Ghaziev's fights, except when he got knocked out. Shout out to the GOAT, Shamil Ghaziev, right? White House card, we have Josh Hokett faking that he's trying to do an armbar over Derek Lewis. I get that he's doing a bit. But the fact that Derek Lewis didn't even try to escape, no hitchhiker, wasn't moving his hips, was just sitting there and kind of just like letting it happen. They just give you the sensation that this is not a professional MMA division. This is not something that should be going on. Right? I have this stat pulled up here. Shout out to Ovin Vintahanj on Twitter, I believe. There's 37 active fighters in the UFC heavyweight division. Average age of 32, right? Barely any young people in here. 0 former champs. Only 2 fighters have pound for pound rankings. 21 fighters with less than 5 plus fights in the UFC. 19 fighters with less than 3 UFC wins. Only 5 fighters with no losses, right? Only 6 fighters on win streaks. 17 fighters lost their last fight. 11 fighters with 5 plus years of experience in the UFC. And 15 fighters have losing records. These are MMA professionals in this division. You read this stat, if I give you these stats, you'll be like, all right, this is your regional, this is over here, this is my regional Spanish promotion that we're talking about, right? These are the heavyweights signed on that roster. No, man, this is the creme of the creme. This is the heavyweight division of the UFC. All right, there's no world in where this can happen, and there's no world in which this division only has 4 good heavyweights. And that 4 is really like pushing it because I put Alex Pereira in here, who has 1 fight at heavyweight. Okay, I don't want to hear anything about Volkov, about Sergey Pavlovich, Walter Walker. Walter Walker has become a one-trick pony inside the UFC. He's heel hooking people who have taken 2 jiu-jitsu classes in their life and are used to being inside control and just kimuraing an Americana, just everyone in class because they're 100 pounds heavier, right? Sergey Pavlovich. He made his way into an interim title fight off of just being a heavyweight. He has knockout power, right? Congratulations, brother. You and Derek Lewis are on the same level. And then Alexander Volkov, he's good. He's shown some technical ability. You cannot be having the close fights you've been having with these people, bro. Jailton Almeida, even Waldo Cortez Acosta, like, let's be for real, all right? I had these 4 good heavyweights here. They are good. Of course, we know Alex Pereira, that's my GOAT. Great striking, you know, the wrestling's a little bit weird. We saw him lose to Cyril Gahn. It is what it is. You know, fighters get fluked. It happens. Now, moving up a division is hard a lot of times. You need some time to adjust. Cyril Gahn, very athletic, a very good heavyweight. He's actually 265 pounds lean. Same thing with Tom Aspinall, really built for the division. One of the fastest, if not the fastest heavyweights we've ever seen. Who I think is going to become the eventual heavyweight GOAT if he can get his eyes to work again. And Josh Hokett, who despite all his gimmicks, is a legitimate wrestler who is really, really fast, like welterweight speed, middleweight speed, up at heavyweight, and I think can give problems for most people in the division. And we've seen him run through most of the heavyweight division. But these are the only good heavyweights. There's no other division in the UFC except maybe 1 or 2 of the women's division where you can point to it and say, yeah, there's only 4 good legitimate fighters here, right? Lightweight division, we have so many people. Armin, Gaethje, Ilya, Charles. You're going down the list. You know, Islam up at welterweight, used to fight at lightweight. Gamrot's a great fighter. Salkill's coming up. We have a bunch of prospects. Who are our prospects it feels like we've seen 1 or 2 prospects come up in the heavyweight division, and they've done well, but we get like one of them every 2 years, it feels like. It's actually insane. So let's go over the point of this video. The heavyweight division is going to get exposed by the people coming up from light heavyweight and coming up in heavyweight right now. Let's start off with the prospects we have at heavyweight currently, right? Alexandar Rakic, we just saw him fight this last night, you know, we saw him fight on that Serbia card. It was a pretty boring performance, right? But he did show that he can hang in there with the guys, right? He's definitely faster, has a speed advantage as we knew he was going to have. He was a little bit undersized, but he was able to prevent any of the wrestling. And I think against most of these rankings, you guys see the little star, it indicates who I think he could beat. Ryan Spann, right? I think he could definitely, Ryan Spann, former light heavyweight. I think he could definitely fluke a Ryan Spann win. He's faster, he keeps his distance better. Mick Parkin, I think he'd do him the same as he did Tybura. Right, just keeping him at range, outpointing him is just what's going to happen to most of these fat heavyweights. Sergey Spivak, same situation. Of course, if Sergey gets on top of you, it's an issue, right? Walter Walker, I think the reason Walter Walker has had so much success in this division is because the people, like I said, he's fighting, they've barely drilled any sort of jiu-jitsu defense. They're used to being in their jiu-jitsu class, being the biggest person there, getting inside control, and just Americaning everyone. That's just what happens when you're 300 fucking pounds in jiu-jitsu class, right? Waldo Cortez Acosta, we saw in that Alexander Volkov fight that he was able to be kept at range, and all he was reduced to was just throwing overhands and hoping to miss. I think Alexander's kicks would do a really good job against Waldo Cortez Acosta. And finally, Rizvan Kuniev, he's just a low output man that would probably be in a really boring decision. This is probably the hardest fight on here for Rakic. But he would definitely be out-volumed by Rakic. And if he doesn't catch Rakic, if he doesn't get on the legs of Rakic and blob him, that's another decision win, 3-round decision win for Alexandar Rakic. And that's just what it is with these fighters. Look, just a guy in Alexandar Rakic who hadn't had a win since like 2021 down at the light heavyweight division comes up and stylistically is already a problem for damn near like a third of the division, almost half of the division. Right? In what world is that something that should be happening? Right? On to the next prospect, Gable Steveson, the loophole himself. I hate this man with a passion, right? You guys know anything about this guy's history. Don't know if I'm allowed to talk about it on YouTube, but definitely should not be fans of this man. But even this guy who has 3 professional MMA fights, I already believe would pose a problem for 4 of the ranked heavyweight fighters in the UFC division. That's crazy. Ryan Spann, right, he's not going to defend the takedown. Same thing with Mick Parkin. He's going to get blobbed. Sergey Spivak, I'm sure because of Sergey Spivak's submissions, he'd accept bottom position. And he probably ended up getting finished by ground and pound. And Waldo Cortez Acosta, we haven't seen his wrestling get tested. We saw him fight Shamil Gaziev, right, the GOAT. But that's a volleyball player. And the takedowns were like, I don't even know if he attempted any takedowns in that fight. So I take Gable Steveson to win most of, if not all of these fights by decision pretty clearly. And this is a guy, again, who has 3 professional MMA fights. And we're already talking about him beating this guy. Imagine, okay, the MMA trainer at my gym, he's 2-2. Right? Imagine he was 3-1 or 4-0. And I told you, yeah, this guy who's in the regional scene, he has 4 wins on the regional scene. He's already ready to beat 4 of the ranked UFC fighters. You think, damn, this guy's fucking crazy. Gable Stevenson's not that good, bro. But he's better than these guys. That's what I'm talking about. These are some sorry-ass heavyweights we have in this division right now. On to another one, Mario Pinto. This guy is actually elite. He's a heavyweight, real deal heavyweight. He looks a little bit soft and chubby in this picture, but he's pretty built for the division. He has great speed. He's super composed on the feet. He's super calm when he fights. Nonchalant final boss, right? He's from Portugal, but he's low-key British. Don't really know what's going on with this guy. But I'd pick him to KO Ryan Spann, KO Mick Parkin in the first round, both of them. Against Brando Pericic, would be an interesting fight. We're going to talk about Brando in a second. Brando has really nice kicks. He has a good kickboxing background. But I'd pick him to win that fight, I think probably by KO in the second or third round. Vitor Petrino coming up from light heavyweight. Still a really good prospect in his own right. We're going to talk about him now in the heavyweight division. He'd knock him out too. Curtis Blades, I think that was probably one of the closest fights of the ones we're going to talk about. But I'd pick Mario Pinto to win a 3-round decision based on damage against Curtis Blades. 5-rounder, I'd pick Curtis. But in a 3-rounder, for sure, pick Mario Pinto. Against Sergey Spivak, again, Sergey Spivak is getting slimed in almost all of these matchups. Walter Walker. I believe, I pray that Mario Pinto defends a heel hook, right? This is the level we're talking on. This is the same talking points I'm going to repeat over and over again. These fighters are just not on the level they're supposed to be. There's no shot this guy Mario Pinto comes into the UFC and is already no diffing damn near the whole rankings, right? I think he'd lose to Josh Hooker by decision, but he beat Rizvan Kuniev based on output, based on damage. He would beat Sergey Pavlovich, I think, especially this Sergey Pavlovich, who's very hesitant. He's very gun shy. He hasn't really for his last few fights, he hasn't really shown what his abilities. And Alexandre Volkov, Alexandre is not really used to fighting people as close to his size, and Mario Pinto has a really close height and reach advantage to Alexandre Volkov. Of course, Alexandre is huge. He's a big ass dude. But I'd pick Mario Pinto to win that fight by decision. This is a prospect that just got into the UFC a couple fights ago. And I'm already talking about him beating damn near the whole entire, right, like heavyweight ranked fighters. Like, it's actually insane. All right. And finally, Brando Pericic, probably one of the weaker prospects on here. But even watching his highlights, seeing his previous fights in the UFC and on the Fight Pass, this guy's good, bro. He's already ready to be at least Ryan Spann, Mick Parkin, Sergey Spivak, and Rizvan Kuniev. Right? You'd have an argument for him against Curtis Blades. He has really good kicks. We've seen Curtis struggle with speed. That Brando Pericic, Tom Aspinall, similar speed to Brando Pericic. We've seen Curtis Blades struggle with that. I would pick Curtis, out of respect for my boy. But that's another matchup where it's kind of 50-50. And this is a guy who's just got in the UFC. Now, for Vitor Petrino, coming up from light heavyweight, he's had his first fight at heavyweight, and he's looked like you expected him to look. He's light heavyweight. He was a very cut 205er. Moves up, right? He's all muscle, moves up, puts on a little bit of fat, but looks great physique-wise for the heavyweight division, and is fast, right? He's not going to be too outsized in this division. He's ready to beat the Ryan Spanns, Mick Parkins, Sergey Spivaks, Rizvan Kunievs. I'd even pick him to beat Alexander Volkov. I'd be worried for his chin. Okay, I know I'd be worried for his chin, but I would pick Vitor Petrino to win that fight. There's a guy coming up from light heavyweight. It would be a 50-50, but I would kind of side with Vitor Petrino. And this is Alexandre Volkov, who has had a great run at heavyweight so far, right? Losing to someone who is ranked 11th. Dude is genuinely 9 spots below Alexandre Volkov. And I already think it's just a matter of time until he loses to him. These are guys who have not had a good, successful career at light heavyweight, coming up to heavyweight, and already being favorable matchups against most of the division. I believe, if I'm not wrong, Alexandar Rakic opened up as a favorite in his last fight this weekend in Serbia, right? It is what it is. The odds makers see this shit. We see this shit. This heavyweight division is not up to par. So let's talk about some light heavyweight prospects. People who I think could come up from light heavyweight and do really well even at this point. Starting off, Jan Blachowicz. We just saw him get chinned by fucking Navajo Sterling, the white Adesanya. That was very tragic. But Jan Blachowicz, 42-year-old, 43-year-old Jan Blachowicz, I believe this guy moves up to heavyweight now and has close fights with a couple of the ranked guys. This guy who hasn't won a fight, I think he's 2-3, 2 draws, 3 losses in his last 5, if I'm not wrong, something like that. I'd pick this guy to beat Ryan Spann, to beat Mick Parkin, to beat Sergey Spivak and Rizvan Kuniev. All by decision, all right, don't get me wrong. I don't know if Jan Blachowicz got it anymore. But these would be close fights, whereas at light heavyweight, you pick this guy against anyone in the rankings, and you're crazy. And that's true. I think I would look at you crazy. This guy's not beating Ankalaev. This guy's not, even though he drew with him, he's not beating all these guys on at light heavyweight. He's not beating Yuri. He's not beating Khalil. Whoever you can think of, I wouldn't even pick him to beat Johnny Walker at this point. He can move up to heavyweight and do good. All right? Jamal Hill. The fat, blobulous Jamal Hill. All these other slides, I have pictures of them winning fights. With Jamal Hill, I just got his big old belly, bro. But Jamal Hill, I'm kind of pushing it with him, but I think he could beat Mick Parkin and Ryan Spann by decision. All right, we can't disrespect this guy that much. These guys are actual buns. I think this guy could be a top 15 ranked heavyweight. I don't know how he ever snuck into the championship picture and actually won the belt off of Glover. Top 5 fluke. I got my hands up. Top 5 flukes in this sport. But Jamal Hill, someone like Jamal Hill, who we make fun of in this channel, who I probably will never pick to win a fight again at light heavyweight ever again. I'd pick this guy at heavyweight, bro. Put him against Mick Parkin. I'm picking Jamal Hill. On my mother, bro. On your mother's life, we're picking Jamal Hill to win that fight. All right? And finally, Zhang Ming Yang. I think this actually might be one of the most fitting picks here. I think Zhang Ming Yang should stay at light heavyweight. He's had a bad loss to Johnny Walker. It's okay. It happens. We all get fluked by the glass cannon Johnny Walker. But this guy could move up to heavyweight. He has a frame for it. He's pretty big. I don't think China's ever had a legitimate heavyweight fighter in the modern era. And I'd pick him to win against a lot of these guys. Same talking points I'm talking about. I would pick him to lose against Volkov, but I'd pick him to beat Pavlovich. I think, of course, he could get cracked. I believe he's gotten finished. He might have gotten chinned, if I'm not wrong. He's gotten chinned before. Alonzo Menefield, right? If I'm not wrong. I might pick him to get chinned by Volkov, Pereira, right? These guys. I don't think he'd defend a heel hook, so I wouldn't trust him against Walter Walker. But Sergey Pavlovich, Rizvan Kuniev, Waldo Cortez Acosta, based on volume, based on output, I could see him winning a decision. Against Sergey Spivak, I could see him finishing Spivak within the 3 rounds. And Mick Park and Ryan Spann, same situation. These are guys that don't deserve to be ranked in any division, right? This guy somehow managed to make 155, 145, lightweight, featherweight division. I still wouldn't pick him to win, bro. All right? Zhang Ming Yang, another one of these guys who you think he's done okay at light heavyweight, moves up to heavyweight, instantly a top 10 ranked fighter in this current heavyweight division. All right? So thank you guys for watching. What do you guys think about these matchups? What do you think about the heavyweight division in 2027? I honestly think it's going to be over for most of these guys. The time of being a fat, blobulous heavyweight with no skills, no speed, no intention, no cardio, I think it's over. Real prospects are coming up. People are coming up from light heavyweight. They're coming to expose, right? Just like the California Gold Rush, whenever that was in the 1800s. They're coming to expose. They're coming to take your gold. It's over. It's over for the heavyweights, all right? It's time to hit the gym. It's time to get on a diet. Time to hit the treadmill, all right? Thank you guys for watching. I'm going to go help my father out with some shit, all right? Ciao, ciao.